It was one of the federal Liberal Party's most distinctive election promises, Justin Trudeau's commitment to legalize marijuana. Once elected, the tough task of finding the way forward landed on the somewhat unlikely point person, former chief of the Toronto Police Service, Bill Blair. We're just months away from the promise making it all the way to royal assent, but there are still plenty of issues on the table. So joining us now for more in the nation's capital, the Liberal MP for Scarborough Southwest, Bill Blair, Parliamentary Secretary to the Ministers of Justice and Health. And you'll forgive me, I still call you Chief Blair. He has spent so many years on the police service, so Chief Blair, it's good to have you back on the program.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's good to be with you.
How on track, I've noticed that the government says July 1st you're not quite going to hit now, but how on track are we for some point in July having this happen?
Actually, I think we're right on track. We've been working hard, full out with our provincial and territorial partners for over 2 years. And certainly all of our officials have been working to put in place the regulations and all of the framework that is necessary to have a successful implementation. But we acknowledge that after the Parliament is through all of its responsibilities in passing the bill, there's still some work that can only commence after the passage of that legislation and before a date of enactment to ensure a smooth and orderly implementation of this rather complex new legislative regime. And so we're just making sure that people understand what the time frame actually is. We're aiming towards July of 2018, but a lot of that is contingent upon the important work that still is yet to take place in the Senate and through Parliament.
What are the details that basically still need to be worked out?
For example, cannabis that is being currently produced by licensed producers under license cannot be transported to the provincial regulator. It can't be distributed to their sales centers. It can't be even put on the shelf until that law comes into effect and is passed through Parliament and royal assent. And so we can't begin that process of making sure that our parliamentary and territorial, provincial and territorial partners are able to put into effect the regulatory frameworks that they've put in place. They've told us they need approximately 8 to 12 weeks to make that happen, and we're absolutely committed not just to passing legislation, but to make sure this implementation achieves its purpose. And you mentioned we're legalizing cannabis, and in fact we are, but we're doing so much more. We're bringing in forward a very comprehensive system of regulation that will control the production and distribution of cannabis in this country. And frankly, that you can't regulate something that's prohibited. And that's why we're lifting the prohibition through legalization. But it's the implementation of that effective regulatory regime that controls production and distribution and consumption in all of our communities across the country that really is going to help us achieve our public purposes of keeping this away from kids, eliminating the criminal enterprise that currently exists, and improving the health and safety of our citizens.
Gotcha. One point of clarification here. Is it you, the federal government, which will determine the appropriate age at which people can consume this, or is that a provincial responsibility?
Well, it's both. In the federal law, we have established a minimum age of 18. But we've also said within that legislation that the provinces can establish a date higher than 18. And my understanding is 8 of the 10 have already established that their age limits will be 19, which aligns more or less with their other regulations with respect to the consumption of alcohol. And so they have that ability. I want to be really clear on something, because what we've said in the federal law is that possession over 5 grams will be a criminal offense, but we've not criminalized the possession for young people under the age of 18, the possession of cannabis. But there'll be an absolute prohibition, and this is really important for everyone, particularly young people, to understand. There will be a complete and enforceable prohibition for the possession, purchase, and consumption of cannabis for all young people under the age of majority as determined by the provinces.
So it's 19 for us.
It'll be 19 in Ontario, and that'll be enforceable through provincial regulation. And the reason that's, I think, critically important is one of the significant harms that we recognize with the current system of cannabis control using the criminal law is that it subjects a lot of young people to a criminal record. And we want to be able to enforce a prohibition but reduce that potential risk and harm to our young people of criminalizing their behavior. And so, exactly as we do with alcohol in Ontario, it'll be a provincial offense to purchase, possess, and consume cannabis under the age of majority. And so it'll be enforceable by the police. The police will be able to seize that cannabis. They'll be able to issue a ticket. But the outcome for those young people is a fine and a civil penalty, but not a criminal record. And we think that's an important step forward in this legislation, and all of the provinces that we have been working with are enacting legislation to ensure that there's an enforceable prohibition for the possession for young people, but it's enforceable under the provincial regulation and not under the criminal law.
Let me pick up on this criminal record business because I don't have to tell you, as the former chief of police, there are people in the prisons of this province who are there on drug offenses. And as of whenever this thing does get royal assent and becomes legal, they're going to be in jail for offenses, some of which I guess are no longer illegal. Does the government plan to do anything about that?
Well, let me tell you, Steve, first of all, I think most of the people that you're going to find are actually serving custodial sentences for drug offenses are not there for simple possession of cannabis. They may be there for trafficking in this drug. And under the new legislative regime, we are not legalizing the illicit trafficking of any drug, including cannabis. What we are doing is we're lifting the prohibition against possession, and we're making it possible for Canadian citizens to lawfully acquire and use a cannabis that has been produced under license. But illegal trafficking, illegal production will remain serious criminal offenses.
I take your point on that, but what about if it is, what if you are in jail for simple possession? In that case, do you get a pardon?
Well, what the Prime Minister has been very clear is that until the law is repealed and replaced with a new regime, it remains in effect, and we urge all Canadians to continue to obey the law. But the Prime Minister has also indicated when the new regime is in place that the Minister of Public Safety, Minister Goodall, is prepared to examine the process by which records are suspended and pardons are given for simple possession. And that's an issue that we are committed to examining and reviewing, but at the appropriate time. And that cannot take place until the new legislation is in place and the existing law is repealed. And in other jurisdictions, and I would point out California recently made announcements about their intention, but with respect to some certain record suspensions. But they made that announcement after they changed their legislation, and that's the appropriate time for us to have that discussion. And until that takes place, and until the new system of cannabis control under Bill C-45 is enacted through Parliament and takes effect, we would urge all Canadians to continue to obey the laws that currently exist in this country until they are replaced with what we believe will be far more effective laws in ensuring that this is kept out of the hands of kids and not left up to criminals to produce and distribute.
Let's bring the angle of race into this if we can for a second, and I'll read an excerpt here from the Toronto Star, which says, "Black people with no history of criminal convictions have been 3 times more likely to be arrested by Toronto police for possession of small amounts of marijuana than white people with similar backgrounds," that according to a Toronto Star analysis. Are you concerned that with the increased severity of the penalties for distribution of cannabis outside the legal channels, that marginalized groups may continue to pay a higher price than others?
Well, actually, and one of the reasons we're bringing forward this legislation, I said it on the very first day we began to debate this in the House, that one of our concerns as a government is the disparate impact that the current system of cannabis control has on marginalized communities, poor communities, racialized communities, and Indigenous communities. And it's one of the reasons that motivates us is to take away the possibility of criminalizing the behavior of young people from all communities, but particularly from the ones that I've mentioned. And so that's one of the reasons we think we can create a far more effective regime of cannabis control and a far more just system by doing that. But I also want to be clear, we are replacing the criminal enterprise of illegal production and distribution of cannabis with a well-regulated system that is subject to oversight, rules, regulations, testing, accountability. And that is to ensure the health and safety of all of our citizens. So we're continuing to discourage and enforce the law to prevent illegal trafficking, because we think that's what's putting our kids at risk, what enriches organized crime, and we are currently under the current system. Organized crime is motivated only by profit and not by the well-being of our kids or the health of our citizens. And that's why it's so important that we replace the existing system of cannabis distribution and production with a well-regulated industry. And so I think that's to the betterment of all of our citizens in all of our communities and protecting the health and safety of all of our kids. And so we're absolutely committed to putting that in place. But at the same time, we are also looking at the social determinants of some of that disparity that exists in marginalized communities. And as a government, we are also committed to addressing issues of poverty, unemployment, inadequate housing, lack of services, and the availability of important services to make the changes in the social circumstances in which that disparity takes place to improve the outcomes for all of our kids.
This next question admittedly may require a bit of crystal ball gazing, but I wonder whether this is a first step towards further decriminalization of other currently illegal drugs, And I think, for example, of Portugal, which has decriminalized, I think, all drugs. They've decided this is a health issue as opposed to a criminal issue. Can you imagine Canada taking further steps down that path?
Well, I can tell you that our government has restored the harm reduction principle in the national drug strategy. You know, we are committed to interdicting the illicit supply of drugs that are killing people in Canada today. We are working very hard to reduce the demand for those drugs and to prevent people from getting involved in them. We've made some very significant steps to deal with the intervention of people in crisis who are suffering overdose from these crimes to save lives. And we're also committed to making significant investments in rehabilitation and treatment. We've put harm reduction back in as an important pillar in our national drug strategy, and so we're working very hard at that. But at the same time, it is not the government's intention to legalize any other drug. We looked at the social and health harms of cannabis, and we believe that those harms are more appropriately dealt with through a system of strict regulation rather than prohibition. But there are some drugs, quite frankly, that represent such a significant risk that we believe maintaining a prohibition to interdict the supply and reduce the demand is still an important part. But we are also looking at a wide range of harm reduction strategies to reduce the social and health harms of the use of all of these other drugs. It's the right approach. It's an effective approach. It's not inconsistent with what many countries in the world are doing, but we believe it's the right approach for Canada and to protect lives and to help us address the very significant national health crisis that the opioid crisis is currently confronting communities today. And we believe that harm reduction approach is an important part of a wide range of government responses that we have to bring to bear.
Okay, tell me this. I understand you're working towards July 2018 this year for simple cannabis, but for edibles, for example, that's still another year off. Why the distinction?
Well, one of the things that we learned in other jurisdictions, Steve, we went down and we spoke to people in Colorado and Washington and other jurisdictions that have had the experience of implementing a regulated regime for cannabis. And one of the challenges that they face and pointed out to us is the incredible complexity of regulating edibles to do it safely. And you know, there are enhanced health risks associated to it, and we recognize the complexity of regulating it properly. And so we are committed to bringing in those regulations. And we've said very clearly in our bill is that within 12 months, we'll bring forward the regulations to properly ensure that a market for edibles has a very clear way of delineating and for consumers dosage and potency of what's being consumed with proper labeling and proper packaging to ensure that it can be done safely and to make sure we have the regulations in place so it's not produced in such a way that it would be attractive to children. You know, we are very, very committed in keeping this out of the hands of our kids, and we recognize that the risk this represents. And until those regulations in place, the prohibition will be maintained. But we recognize that there may be more healthful ways for Canadians to consume these drugs, and we just want to make sure that there is an appropriate, strict regulatory framework in place to make sure that that can be done safely.
Let me see if I can make sure I understand what part of that regulatory framework might be. I think in Ontario today, if I want to make my own wine or my own beer in my own place, I can do that. I can't sell it, but I can do that. Will the same be true for cannabis?
Yes, and frankly, if there will not be a regulation that prevents someone who's using lawfully obtained cannabis to create an edible, but what they will not be allowed to do is exactly as you say, they'll not be allowed to sell it. You know, and we want to also make sure that it's not just a matter of putting regulations in place, but we've got to make sure that the public has accurate information based on the best advice and evidence that we can get from the medical community so that people can make smart, lower risk choices about the consumption of cannabis. You know, there is quite frankly a lot of myth and misinformation around that, and we want to make sure that the public has not only proper regulations in place to control this in a commercial market, but to make sure that consumers can have information about how they can do this in a safer way.
Well, let me follow up on that. Yeah, forgive me. Let me follow up on that distribution system. Of course, the LCBO is responsible for selling booze and will be responsible for selling weed. But can you imagine a system where we kind of have craft brewers who can sell their own in their own places? Can you see that happening with weed?
Well, one of the things that we have put in place is we've allowed the provinces to develop their own regulations and regulatory frameworks for the distribution of cannabis within their communities. But we've put rules in place. And frankly, we've also built a consensus with all our provincial and territorial partners on why we're doing some of those regulations we're putting in place. That we don't want it marketed to kids. We don't want it, we want strict regulatory control over the circumstances under which this is distributed in order to reduce those social and health harms. And so the provinces have the authority to do that as long as it's done in a way which is, first of all, compliant with the federal regulations, which place, I think, reasonable but strict limits on marketing, branding, the sponsorship, a whole range of activities to ensure that this is not being promoted. I want to be really clear on something as well, Steve. It is not the Government of Canada's intention to promote the use of this drug. We recognize that there are significant social and health risks related to cannabis, and we want to make sure that Canadians can make safer, healthier, and better informed choices. And we want to promote, for those who choose to use it, socially responsible use. And so that's the purpose of these regulations. And part of that is through the regulations, and part of that is through public education.
Would part of socially responsible use include, for example, we know at home it will be acceptable. How about, cannabis cafes, that kind of thing?
Well, again, that will be determined by the provincial or territorial authority within their jurisdiction. But we want to make sure that if they make that choice, it can be done in such a way that it protects the health and safety of consumers, and for those who choose not to use it, that their rights and their health is not in any way compromised by those regulations and by that approach. And so we've been working very closely. And one of the things that we have urged upon the provinces, and I've been really encouraged by this, is our task force recommended, and we have reinforced, the idea that we've urged the provinces and territories to begin cautiously, strictly, to do it in a way which promotes that socially responsible approach. And the lessons that we've learned from other jurisdictions is to start very strict, and as evidence is accumulated, and as we gain experience in this, we can make adaptation in our regulations that are appropriate to the evidence and appropriate to our experience with this substance. But it's important to start strictly, and not to put in place those things which cannot be fixed later. And so it's one of the reasons we've taken a very cautious approach with edibles, and we've urged the provinces to take a very cautious approach with their distribution systems, and that, in fact, is what we've seen reflected in the approaches that they've taken.
Okay, Mr. Blair, let me do one more question with you, and that is, I'm not going to pretend this is an original question, but I haven't asked it of you before, and I'm interested in the answer. At some point in your political journey, you, I presume, have found it passing strange that after 3 decades on the police service in Toronto, responsible for, policing this thing, you're now the guy responsible for making it legal and making it all happen smoothly. What do you think of that irony?
Actually, I don't think it's ironic at all, Steve. I will tell you, I spent my entire life protecting kids and keeping my city safe. I don't think there's any higher duty than the protection of our kids. And in my conversation with my Prime Minister and with my government, and as we brought this legislation forward, we kept the focus overwhelmingly on putting in a public health framework to reduce the harms of cannabis use, and reducing the harms in particular, the exposure to kids. This is not a drug that should be used by kids under the age of 18. And right now, the decision to sell to those kids is left in the hands of criminals, and there's an awful lot of misinformation out there, and we haven't been able to be very successful. We've got the highest rates of cannabis use among our kids of any country in the world. We can do better. We have to do better. I've also spent most of my professional life fighting organized crime. The easiest money that organized crime makes is in the illegal production and distribution of cannabis in our country. It's an industry worth $7 to $8 billion for them. And all of the laws that the police currently require to fight organized crime, they're retaining in this new legislation. But we're bringing in a new system of cannabis production and consumption that will give Canadian consumers, adult consumers, who wish to use this drug, a better choice, a safer and healthier choice, and a more responsible choice, not to go to the criminal and to enrich organized crime, but instead to acquire a product of known potency, provenance, and purity from a legitimate, well-accountable production regime, and through a legitimate store, not on a street corner in an alleyway. And so, for me, this is entirely consistent with my life's work of protecting our kids and keeping our communities safe.
Chief Blair, forgive me, I'm going to jump in because we're about to lose our satellite with you. So I thank you for coming on TVO tonight, and thank you for clarifying many of the issues we've been discussing. Take care.
Thank you, Steve.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.